Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of the virtual Service Design Global Conference. Hi, everyone. My name is Marina Tertarian, and I will be your MC for the remaining block and spending the day together. So I want to introduce myself a little bit before we get started. I see some familiar faces in the chat. Hi, everyone. It's always nice to see old friends at these events. So I am a service design leader and educator in Los Angeles. I work at a company called the Y Lab, and I'm also the host of a podcast called Why Service Design Thinking, which might be how many of you might recognize my name. I will be making a special announcement actually about the podcast throughout the day, so hang on for that. A little bit about my work. So I do a lot of work in the intersectionality of service design. So I combine with behavior science, with design education, and social justice. So all that to say, I'm really, really excited about the speakers today because we'll be getting a really amazing variety of topics that will be really interesting. Throughout the day, I'll be giving you little reminders. So as you listen to the speakers, you are welcome to type questions in the Q&A, and we will have Q&A blocks in between the talks where you'll be able to engage with the speakers a little bit. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, Vimla Apadu, I'm so sorry. Vimla is a design thinker, international speaker, and an advocate for changing the way businesses think. And she uses a focus on technology, design, and culture to align profit and purpose. Vimla will be talking about embedding culture change in organizations, and she is writing a book on the topic, so something to look forward to. Welcome, Vimla. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. Cool. I hope you can all see my screen. So I'm Vimla Apadu, and I'm talking from the sunny north of England in Manchester, which is the industrial heartland. So you'll have to forgive me for the background noise of trams and buses going through the city centre, because I have the luxury of working from a co-working space today, hence the white walls behind me. So my talk today is on Chameleon, Get into Grips with Culture Club, which I hope enticed you to come to a talk around culture design. I'm from an organisation called Honey Badger, and we exist to deliver measurable change through culture and experience. And we work through a kind of a mix of culture design, org design, number design, and inclusion. And we really see culture as the heart of change within an organisation, to help businesses and people take on self-reflection and organizational reflection to improve the experiences that their customers and their people go through, but also to put in place the measures that matter to prove change has happened. Before I dig into this talk, I really want us to take a breath and take a step back and go through a bit of a self-reflection to realize that we're conditioned to feel uncomfortable talking about race. And in this talk on culture, I'm really going to be speaking through a race lens today, not only because of what we've seen through the COVID pandemic, but because it's the thing we're taught to speak the least about in business. And a big motivator of mine is to depoliticize race and bring it to the forefront of the conversations that we have. So just to make it clear, the culture design and frameworks that I use and that culture design is based on bring in everything that makes us different in all aspects of culture. But today we'll be focusing on race. So if we think about fearless culture and really taking an approach to being comfortable speaking about race, we first need to really think about what culture is. And so the premise that I'm going to be talking about today is starting with our own individual cultures, the things that make us us. And for me, this is rooted in my family's immigration story. My parents were both born and bred in Mauritius, which is a tiny island off the south coast of South Africa. off the coast of South Africa, and they were born in kind of relative poverty and immigrated to the UK to work for the NHS and to build a future for us, their children, the next generation, that would open up the doors to opportunity that they had closed on them. They didn't have a choice about where they worked or how they worked. They were forced into careers that meant that they could provide not only for their immediate family, for their family overseas. And this immigration story is embedded in me, in my DNA, and understanding that life is about giving back to the people around us and to opening doors for others. And what I see today is my culture is really rooted in family ties and connection and building familiarity in spaces that can feel really unfamiliar. And when I think about my culture and I reflect on what makes me, it's built upon a humble upbringing and recognizing the opportunities that have been given to me through sacrifice, but also in understanding and empathizing with different relationships and different cultures and different norms, because throughout my career and throughout my life, I was made to feel like an outsider in the environments that I worked in. And so once we have our culture and we've taken the time to understand ourselves, we move into what it means to have a team culture and how we want to work with the people around us. And so this is where we start to see the nuances in what team means to different people. A report that Culture Shifted, an organisation that I'm working with that's building software to prevent bullying and harassment, found that when it comes to diversity in the workplace, everyone agreed there was a problem. Everyone said, yes, diversity is an issue. But when we scratched the surface of that and broke it down into aggregated data, we saw that actually people of colour felt that there was much bigger issue with diversity in the workplace than their white colleagues. And so what we're starting to see is team can mean different things to different people, and the environments and team dynamics that we build have an influence on the way that we perceive our jobs and opportunities. And so we need to be able to feel confident in our own cultures to bring those into the team cultures so that we have a shared understanding of the problems that we're facing as a team, internally and externally. A big research piece that Honey Badger have done recently in partnership with an organisation called Diverse and Equal has found that 43% of people of colour in organisations have experienced workplace bullying. And what this is showing us is that the environments we're building or the ways that we're operating within an organisation massively disenfranchise a huge population of that working team and working environment. And it's up to us to try and do something about this in the teams that we're working in so that we address these things head on rather than it becoming the norm. Once we've understood who we are and how we want to work together as a team, we can then start to shift how we want to work within an organisation. We focus on our culture, we bring our culture into our team culture, and then we use that to thrive within the business setting that we're in. And so what this can look like is uncovering and understanding what an organisation means to different people. So again, what we found was that 48% of people of colour in work were happier to work from home than compared to 35% of their white counterparts, their Caucasian counterparts. And what this is showing us is the way that businesses are set up and the stories that we tell ourselves about the environments that we're building can be based on unconscious bias and have a fundamental flaw in them that prevents anyone that might feel different from feeling successful, from being able to thrive in that working environment. We should all feel as comfortable working in an office as anyone else. We should all have that equality in that place. And so what we also have seen is when it comes to senior leadership, the perception of diversity varies massively. And again, when we look at the structures and the norms that we have within an organisation, when we move from junior to senior, we start to see that the drop-off rate for the progression for people of colour drops off. And this is all intrinsic in the cultures and the ways of working that we're building within an organisation. So what I really want you to take away is the building blocks for culture design is to work within your teams and organisation to bring yourself into those settings. Focus on how you can encourage, how you start with yourself to encourage yourself to think about your own individual culture, your individual experiences, the things that are intrinsic in your DNA that make you you, to figure out how you want to work in a team. How do you bring your own cultural values into a team culture to build a shared understanding of the issues that you face, but also the things that you like to celebrate? The small things from don't speak to me before I've had my 9 a.m. coffee, through to it's really important for me to get home at 5 o'clock so I can see my family. Everything and everything is important into how we work as a team and the dynamics we bring so that we can all thrive. Then use that to influence up into the organization of, okay, this is our team value, this is how we want to work. This is then how we want to work within this bigger business space. This is our rhythm, these are our rhythms and rituals. Let's see how that shapes with the business that we're in. And slowly but surely, as more and more teams across the organization do this, you push up culture change rather than it coming from top down. So what I'm trying to see and encourage is a new way of thinking about culture, so that it doesn't come from business leaders, but it comes from the people on the ground doing the doing, the individuals who are working within that organization. So if that's what culture is, then fearless culture is taking it one step further. It's getting uncomfortable being uncomfortable and addressing the elephants in the room, the things that we're told not to bring into the office space. And that means sitting with our team colleagues to take a stand. Colin Kaepernick took a knee in the NFL in 2016, 4 years ago, before we had the most recent Black Lives Matter protests. His colleagues did the same with him, but unlike Colin Kaepernick, they've been able to get jobs in the NFL since. Colin Kaepernick still hasn't. And what's important here is when we're able to bring our individual cultures into our team cultures, we can bring solidarity with us in addressing the concerns of individuals as everyone's problem, as everyone's concern, as everyone's issue, and build a stronger, more solid base for change within the organisation. It means accepting that the ways we work and the differences in working patterns exist. It's recognising that we shouldn't be asking single people for what their access needs are. It's a question that everyone should get asked, because everyone and anyone might have their own access needs. It's recognising that different people work in different ways. And once we have that shared team culture and understanding, we can spread that out across the organisation. It's focusing on inclusion. It's understanding that fearless culture is embedded in building inclusive environments and inclusive spaces for everyone. But in order to be inclusive and in order to truly understand what an inclusive environment is, we need to recognise our own privilege. So as much as my history and my story is rooted in my parents' immigration story, through their sacrifices, I've had my eyes open to the privilege that I have had. I went to university. I live in a 2-parent household. I've been able to have access to opportunities that hundreds and thousands of people haven't. And with that comes my privilege to open those doors for other people. Because when we don't, we end up in situations where decisions are made that disempower and disenfranchise the people. This is an advertising campaign from H&M that unintentionally put a young black boy in a hoodie that is described as the coolest monkey in the jungle next to a white young boy who's described as a survival expert. And the decision-making process for this to get live is questionable, because that decision-making process forgot to understand or ignored the problem of the racist connotations of calling black people monkeys. That is systemically racist in a historical context. And what we start to see is when we're not inclusive, these decisions get made and people are hurt, and it's not okay for this to keep happening. It's seeing responses like this to the Black Lives Matter movement. Pretty Little Thing, a UK branding company, a UK clothing company, released this image alongside their Black Lives Matter statement. And in doing so, failed to ignore the nuance of what the Black Lives Matter movement was about. They failed to bring in a designer who could visually represent black skin tone in the same consideration that they had done for a white design, and completely nullified the statement that they made by ignoring the importance of visual representation in what could have been seen as a harmless cartoon. And it gets even more bleak when we don't think about inclusion through the technology and products and services that we're putting out into the world, where the AI that we're feeding into technology can fundamentally harm and kill people with darker skin tones. And you'll be able to find all of the links to these articles in the slides as well. And it gets even more real when we start to see that facial recognition technology in police systems is disproportionately highlighting young Black faces to be stopped and searched. And what's even more scary is that this technology is being put out into the world, knowing that there's a problem with it, knowing that that's the historical data that's being fed into the system. And then when you do a like-by-like comparison, you can really see how imaging is fed to show different portrayals in different skin tones. A Black hand holding the same instrument as a white hand shows a gun versus a monocular. And what we can see here is that we need to be conscious of how we're including different data sets, how the data is being aggregated in order to make decisions that are inclusive of everyone. Because when we don't, really dangerous things can be put out into the world and it's difficult to get back. But what can we do about it? What's in our power to do? Go out and speak to the people. As a culture advocate and as a culture designer, I take it upon myself to understand different cultural perceptions to different issues. This is a project that I worked on in Bradford, which is an area in Yorkshire in the UK, where the council told me I wouldn't be able to do any outreach work with the Muslim community because they were too hard, they were too difficult to get in the room. And within a day of working on the project, I was able to build the connections and get out and test our paper prototype with them. And so it's up to us to do the hard work to get in front of the communities who need their voices to be heard, whether it's the disenfranchised within the city or the people who don't look like us, or even finding the people that we need to open those doors so that it's not us that is necessarily going through them, it's the people who can, it's the people who are able to make those connections. Because without that cultural inclusion, without that understanding and empathy, we will keep putting stuff out into the world that isn't reflective of the people who need them. And equally, it means making sure that we're getting the diversity in our research that we need to, so that we're working with people of all ages, all backgrounds, all abilities, so that we can truly say that we've done the research to understand how and what people are going to use in our products or services. Where are the gaps in our data that we need to address, and how can we put that out into the public space, knowing that knowing that good things are going to happen, knowing that we've done everything we can to have a transparent model of how we've included different voices in the process. And it's meant to be hard. This isn't meant to be easy. It's a difficult thing to do, and it's a difficult thing to get right. But that's part of it. It's up to us as designers, as culture designers, as people in the space to bring this inclusion with us everywhere that we go. Otherwise, we're not doing ourselves justice, and we're not doing justice to the service and products that we're putting out. And when you do it, it can look really great. So this is a screenshot from a Blumenwald, which is a flower delivery company who used to have a process of sending out newsletters every Mother's Day to their whole database. What they'd failed to realise was that in doing so, they were forgetting a huge amount of their users who couldn't celebrate Mother's Day, who didn't have mothers, who were hurt by constant reminders of what they didn't have in their life. And so it's important to realise that in being inclusive, in making small tweaks and changes, you can make a huge difference in people's life and output in how to be accepted in part of that process, in part of that service, and it can really make a difference. And equally, when you are inclusive through the design process, throughout everything that's being designed, you can start to make small tweaks and changes to the ways that what you're putting out into the world, whether it's through illustrations, through your narrative, through your research. You can really make sure that everyone and anyone is included in what you're putting out there. And so my final point in the way to really bring culture design into the forefront of organisational change is through the data that we are using. because quite fundamentally we have a data problem. And it exists in every sector, in every industry. In the medical industry, it can look like this, where 90% of imaging in medical books on skin issues is based on white skin. Therefore, people with any other skin tone are not being treated correctly or being misdiagnosed with skin conditions. And it took a young medic student in the UK to create a PDF of what it looks like on darker skin tones for it to get any publicity. It's calling out the non-aggregated data in new tech startups. Natural Cycles is a hormone tracking application that collects data on different issues. And the data exists in the world to know that different races experience different pain, Black women are more likely to die during childbirth, etc. And with a new organisation comes a new opportunity to use that data and aggregate it in ways to get a deeper, more fruitful understanding of different experiences of different things. But these companies are still not doing it. And the same goes for banking, where Starling used facial recognition technology as a proof of identity concept to help people get onto internet banking more quickly. And what I found when we tried to use this with Honeybadger was that I failed the facial recognition technology 3 times where my white co-founders didn't. And because the bank is not aggregating their data or recognizing or collecting data on who's failing and why, they're unable to solve a problem. Because we fundamentally can't solve a problem if we don't know it exists. And the only way we can know it exists is when the data tells it to us. And data collection means not just the quantitative data, but the qualitative data too. To tell a fruitful story of the lived experiences of people in our organizations. We want to start addressing things like, do we have a talent retention problem with the people of color in this organization? Are more women of between 26 and 30 leaving this organization and why? And it's only when we have the data to tell us those issues that we can start to solve them. Because I'm sure we're all used to seeing forms like this, where we're asked to categorize ourselves based on data norms and data standards, wherever we are. And we've all got data to give. And once we start using that data or giving our data out into forms like that, we can start to see some pretty stark trends. Honeybadger found that 26% of white employees thought they were paid unfairly, compared to 43% of people of colour who thought they were paid unfairly. Unless we start building data transparency into our organisations and businesses, we won't be able to address some of the systemic cultural barriers that exist within businesses that prevent us from being equal and fair. And that is the same narrative as applied to promotions, where we haven't got the data to show that promotions are unfair. We've only got the tacit knowledge of the people who work in those organisations. So we really need to start using our data to change the debate, using the data that we own, the data about ourselves, feeding it into the system so that we can see the problems that exist and use it to push decision makers to really change the narrative and change the working environments. Because it's time now to take action. At a time where there's mass global change right on our doorsteps, the power structures that exist are the loosest they're ever going to be in our lifetimes. Now is the time to take action. Because it's our responsibility as designers to take it as our responsibility within our power to make these changes through the services and products that we're putting out into the world now. We each have a voice and we each need to use it, because if we don't use it now, it's going to be hard to in the future. Because we deserve better. We deserve technology that will serve us, that will do us justice, that includes everyone in the society around us. And it's not just us that deserves better, the future deserves better. It's time for us to set the standard for change for the future that we want to see, to design a future where everyone can thrive in. It's time to be fearless and change the world. And I thought I'd put this GIF in here just to pay homage to where I got the title for this talk from, because this is how we can get to grips with Culture Club, through creating fearless change in the world and trying to design a future that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Vimla. That was absolutely beautiful. And I also definitely have Karma Chameleon stuck in my head now.